Welcome to the Siga Network podcast. I'm your host, Hui-chin. Today, we dive into a conversation with Arielle Tucker, a certified financial planner and enrolled agent, and founder of Connected Financial Planning. Arielle is based in Switzerland and has spent over a decade guiding professionals and families through the complexities of tax and financial planning across Europe. She also hosts Passport to Wealth, a platform dedicated to educating U.S. expats worldwide. In this episode, Arielle unpacks her journey from international tax compliance to building a planning-first firm, shares why financial education matters, and explores the realities of cross-border life. Get ready for insights that inspire smarter global planning. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Arielle Tucker. Hello, welcome to the Siga Network podcast, Arielle.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation, basically for all my guests, because we've, talked about cross-border planning the last few years, but we really more or less focus on how we're helping clients, how our business are doing, but not everybody gets the chance to really dig back into, how they get into financial planning, and especially cross-border planning. So I'm really excited for you to share more today. So tell us about, your journey. How did you start in this industry?
Okay, so my name is Arielle Tucker. I am a certified financial planner and I'm also an IRS enrolled agent. And my career started in the tax side. And I'm also a little bit weird because my career started internationally as well. So as you can probably hear, I'm an American. I grew up in New York, upstate New York. But in 2011, my husband took an opportunity to do his PhD in Switzerland, and me as the trailing student spouse ended up in Switzerland and kind of falling backwards into a career in tax. And the only reason I fell backwards into this career was because I was in Zurich when FATCA was blowing up in Switzerland, right? Everyone was looking for tax compliance. And I had done a lot of advocacy and tax work in my undergrad, which was all for low income individuals. So definitely not like the Swiss Americans living in Switzerland. And so I had actually seen a 1040. And so
Mhm,
all of a sudden I show up in Switzerland in 2011 and literally all the banks, all the big four, they're looking for anyone who's even seen a 1040. And I was like, oh,
mhm.
I've seen that.
Hmm.
And so all of a sudden I ended up working at PwC doing tax compliance for high net worth, corporate executives living in Switzerland and Europe. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, what's a Schedule D? I had never seen one, right? Because I'm working for these ultra low income individuals trying to help them get their, earned income tax credits. And so I ended up in this whole new world of tax compliance and secret Swiss bank accounts. And it was super, super interesting for me to find this world existed. I just
Mhm,
kept saying yes to different opportunities. And one of the things that I noticed when I was working for these individuals, we would go in and do a tax meeting with them as part of their corporate package. They would always get a tax meeting. And we would have our tax meeting with them, and they would be so annoyed and so angry because we'd already be meeting with them at the end of the year, for the previous year we're reviewing. So at this
mhm,
point, nothing can be changed, right? You file a
yeah,
tax return, it's it's 2025, we're filing your 2024 tax return.
mm,
I can't change anything. And usually
mhm,
it's after the October 15th deadline because these are complex tax returns. We're having the meeting. And especially if you're talking to corporate executives working in Switzerland, where our tax rates are a little bit lower than US federal rates, or we have some mismatches, they will owe additional US tax. Or because of their tax equalization policy with their firm, they may owe additional tax. So we have to go and explain to them why they owe. And most of the time they're owing. And it's never a pleasant conversation, right? Being the bearer of bad news is a terrible place to be. So one of the trends that I'm noticing here in these meetings is, okay, this is not planning, this is compliance, right? But what the executives are really interested in is the planning. But that's not my job. No one is paying me for this job. And so
mhm,
I was really lucky enough to have a mentor there, Melissa Marshall, She was
Mhm.
like, "You would make a really good CFP." And I was like, "What's a CFP?" I'd never heard of the term CFP. She just happened to be there and I was there. And so she was the one who was like, "Go and do your CFP." And that's the reason why I'm a CFP. It was because I was lucky enough to have a manager from the US who was a CFP who was like, "Go and do this other credential." And so that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and now you're doing, obviously more like comprehensive, cross-border planning versus what you're doing, perhaps more cross-border tax compliance, but not even the cross-border tax planning yet. So, how do you move on from cross-border tax compliance to cross-border tax planning and to thinking about, oh, not just tax planning, but overall, what is the difference? What is better, about comprehensive planning than just the
Well, I
tax
wouldn't say
planning?
it's better. I would say it's different, right? And it's, I think, very different personalities. I mean, I think you and I are talking, you can tell that I love people, that I love talking to people. And when you are, and not that you can't love people and be a good accountant, but I would say my personality, they're always
Mm,
like, there's all the accountants and then there's Arielle. Arielle is like over
mhm,
here in her own like little special accounting box.
mm, mm,
And I really wanted to have deep relationships with people. I'm so passionate about creating those relationships, forming those relationships. And so if you're stuck doing tax compliance, especially on corporate engagements, right?
mm,
Those have a certain number of hours. You have to be under the hours. It's all like do your job as quickly as possible, check off the forms, and move on with your day. It's
mhm,
not about the relationships. It's not about the long-going planning. So I knew I had to figure out how to make this pivot at some point. And so for me, the first thing that I needed to do was go and just get my CFP. And I did that completely on my own. And so it was actually in a period of our lives where we were leaving Switzerland. My husband was getting his first job back in New York. And so I had like this summer between having our second child and that I just like banged out. I studied all the time and I took the exam, I passed the exam, and then I became a CFP. And then I was a CFP living in New York with all this really unique cross border experience. And I tried to get a job. I tried to get a job at like Stamp or Northwestern or like all these big firms because I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but like these are the firms that are kind of like in my area. So I should just like go and apply. I would go and meet with the partners and they would like see my resume and they'd be like, that's so interesting. Wow, you lived in Switzerland and you did all this like cross border tax compliance work. So interesting. They did not know what to do with me.
mm,
They were like, yeah, but like, what do you know? I'm like, well, I'm a CFP also, like on top of being, an EA and everything else. They did not know what to do with me because I did not fit in the box.
mhm,
So I got ghosted by so many firms.
mhm,
I'm so thankful that I did. Oh my gosh, because now we know that these types of firms are not planning first firms. They're basically like sales factories. And I remember like guffawing at like, they were like, oh yeah, you're going to work from like 8 to 5 every day. And maybe you'll get like 2 weeks of vacation. And we'll like start you at like, I don't know, it was like 60,000. And bonuses or whatever. And I was just like, oh my God, like coming from Europe where I was making more than six figures, I had, 5 weeks of vacation. I was like, this is insane. Like
mhm,
it's, and I have 2 kids. And so like it's
mhm,
going to cost me more to work at one of these. It was so
mhm,
depressing. So I ended up
mhm,
working, I did some more tax compliance work. I did tax consulting work. And I just didn't find a firm and I wasn't willing to go and like sell my soul to work 50 weeks a year making 60 grand. Like it just wasn't super interesting. So at that point, living in New York, my husband and I had been almost 3 years and we were like miserable. We were like, New York is not for us. We really want to figure out how to get back to Europe. And so I actually had a headhunter reach out to me. They saw my LinkedIn profile, which by the way, pro tip, step one, have a really active LinkedIn profile. Like if you're looking for a job, if you're thinking about ever changing jobs, I have not actually applied for any jobs since 2012. That was the last time I applied for a job, 2012. Every other job have had since then, until I started my own firm, was people would just find me on LinkedIn, reach out to me, and then I would have a job. So someone found me for a startup in Berlin. They wanted me to come and help build like a tax software. So it was no longer tax compliance, but it was still like the fintech kind of side of tax. And I was just so desperate to leave New York that I was like, yes, I don't care. I don't care what it is. I'll leave. Because I knew once I could get back into Europe, my life would reopen in Europe. And I knew from a values perspective, I just fit more into Europe, like at this point, than I was ever going to fit into New York. And so we moved. My husband actually ended up getting put on assignment in Germany. And so that was like an amazing opportunity. I had a firm there after I was with the tech startup, I had another firm reach out to me and they're like, will you come and work for us? You're a unicorn, you know, tax and cross border, and you're a CFP, like come and work for us. And so I went and I worked at that firm. And the best thing that's ever happened for me was that I worked at like a boutique planning firm in cross border, and I had also worked at a startup. And once you have gone through those experiences of working for really small firms and then realizing you can do all the things that you're doing, I have this thing where like I just assume everyone around me is like so much smarter. And as soon as I was like, wait, I can do the planning work. And I've seen a tech startup scale. Like I can do all this stuff. I finally had the confidence in myself to be like, I don't want to wake up and still be working for someone else. Know that my salary is capped because honestly, transparently, that was like my biggest issue. I was like, I am bringing in clients, I'm training team members, I'm building a team, but you're telling me my salary is going to be capped for the rest of my career? Like, no thanks. I believe
Mhm.
way too much in myself to accept that. Like, I refuse. And so, as soon as I realized that was the game we were all playing, and there were
Mhm.
no bonuses and there was no, anything, it was kind of like, well, then I'm just going to go and do it because I was finally at the time, I'm in my mid 30s. My husband has a good job. And I was able to just launch my own firm at that point,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I had all these relationships, right? Because again, building relationships is super key in our industry, that as soon as I just said, "I have my own firm now,"
Mhm.
I didn't really have a want for clients. And in
Mhm.
fact, what I found in building my firm in the last 3 years is there are more than enough clients. I spend 3 hours
Mhm.
a week referring clients to other firms, and I'm happy to do it because I know that we are gonna, like, hit capacity so quickly at our firm
Mhm.
that I
Mhm.
just wanna make sure we get the right clients at our firm, that we can really truly
Mhm.
add value to
Mhm.
their lives, and we are making enough to compensate ourselves so we can live within our values.
Mhm.
That's super important to me, but there are more than enough clients, and it's
Mhm.
all about finding the right firms now and making sure that the referrals are going
Mhm.
to good firms that are
Mhm.
doing a fiduciary financial planning, that are maybe open to a flat fee or hourly consulting, or who just like want to serve their clients in a really good
Mhm.
way. Like the
Mhm.
honestly, the bar is so low that just doing good work, you'll be successful at this in this industry.
You went from where you feel like you don't fit in a traditional mold and box and having your own experiences in different pieces of financial services in, startup and in tax and then in investment management. And now you have your own firm. When you're trying to build your firm, what were some of the things that are non-negotiable for you, especially on the cross-border planning side? Obviously, you started your firm, so it fits your life, it fits your, what you want to build for your life. But in terms of the clientele that you're serving, what are some of the things that you've picked up along the way that you feel like you can uniquely do better than your previous circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, like, do you mean like based on my expertise?
Yes, and just based on the experience that you were doing different types of work before, and now you have your ideal clients. Well, I guess first of all, what are your ideal clients, and what are some of the things that you're doing you feel like they're unique or special that these clients are not getting perhaps somewhere else?
Yeah. So one of the things that was kind of an alarm bell for me at my last firm was I remember being told that I was going to have more than 100 clients. And I think I was getting close to 50 and I was working a lot and I was thinking, wow, this is going to be a lot for me solo cross-border financial planning with 100 clients. Like I'm going to drown. And maybe that is the industry standard. I think maybe that is the industry standard. But I think for me, I was realizing I was having so much fun with other aspects of the job. And
Mm,
what I realized, and I think everyone needs to find like what is your area of genius? And then how do you build your firm to live in your little area of genius as much as possible? And that as soon as I launched my firm, I realized all the things I'm terrible at, I can hire people for. There are a lot of people who are really good and they're happy to work and they can do those things better than me. And then I just get to be me and my little area of genius. And so to me, that means how do I become an educator and a communicator? Right. And so for as you know, we have the Passport to Wealth podcast. And so that's kind of been a passion project because what
mm,
I very quickly learned is there's just There's a lot of Googling, there's a lot of ChatGPT, but there's not a lot of like actual good blogs and experts who are like, hey, these are the red flags. Even if you don't have money, here are the red flags that you just need to know about. So, like, please go and pay someone because if you just continue down this channel, it's going to be very expensive from a cross border perspective, right? So, how do we
Mhm.
just kind of make more awareness? How can I write more? How can I learn to write? Like, that was also
Mhm.
something like I was terrified to even write on LinkedIn 3 years ago. I literally hired a coach for 3 months because I was like, I don't know, like, everyone's going to think I'm an idiot. No one's going to think you're an idiot. Just keep doing it. And
Mhm.
so you kind of have to you have to figure out what you enjoy doing, get
Mhm.
over all of your fears, and then just keep doing it. And constantly, every day, I get to like A B test my life. Did this work?
Mhm.
How did that feel? And I mean, if you can't tell, like, I'm having so much fun. And I didn't realize I was gonna be allowed to have this much fun because I probably would have become a business owner, like, way sooner. Because at this point, I would say
Mm.
I'm an entrepreneur. Like, even more like, when I started my firm, I was a cross-border financial planner. At
Mm.
this point in my life,
Mm.
I'm an
Mm.
entrepreneur who
Mm.
happens to be really good at cross-border financial planning. And
Mhm.
one of the things that we've done very intentionally was create a wait list. We're always
Mhm.
on a wait list, right?
Mhm.
I could say yes to 6 clients a month. I don't want to because that's not good for
Mhm.
me or my lifestyle, my what
Mhm.
I can handle as a mom of 2 and a wife
Mhm.
living 4,000 miles away from
Mhm.
family.
Mm.
Right,
Mhm.
so creating that wait list and making sure that we're being really intentional with our onboarding.
Mhm.
We are not an investment management firm first. I am really not concerned about getting your assets on the first day that you sign your contract with us. We take our
Mhm.
time and we're very intentional. We've built out a very intentional planning process. We are a
Mhm.
planning first firm. And I
Mhm.
think that's really, really important. And I would
Mhm.
say we will be fully capped out probably within the next year, unless I can find good people to hire. um, to work with us because I think that's the other thing is I get a lot of, emails from
Mhm.
people, "I'd love to come work for you." They have
Mhm.
no experience in financial planning or
Mm.
taxes.
Mm.
Not that I don't wanna, like, spend my life training people, except no, I don't. I don't wanna spend my life training people. And what I've actually found as we look to hire, as we look to train people, the best people to me are international tax people turned planners.
Mm.
Because I think one of the most complex issues in cross-border planning, especially when you're dealing with high tax countries, which is what we do a lot of in Europe,
Mhm.
is understanding the taxes because you need to basically understand the US tax system very, very well
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
then be able to start to understand how those other tax systems also operate. And then, oh my gosh, how are they going to interact with each other? Because that's huge, huge, huge for me.
Yeah. And along those lines, one question I had was obviously for you coming from a tax background, it seems just like that you already know the most difficult part about cross-border planning. Feel like you can, like then learn the other stuff. But I don't necessarily know that's true. Like what are some of the difficulties or maybe not so great things about coming from only from a tax background and having to learn the other parts of the cross-border side? Which one is more challenging and which one you have, some stories to share?
I mean, I don't know if this is self-serving, but like I
Mm.
still feel like the tax part is the most complex
Mm.
side.
Mhm.
And if you don't understand that and you're only relying on an external a US tax person and a foreign tax person, and you have to figure
Mm.
out how to translate that for your client, you're basically having to learn and also learning how to translate. And
Mhm.
I think that to me, from what I've seen, because I've worked with other cross border financial advisors who did not come from a tax background, and they may be really, really good on the investment side, or they're really good on the like a more of a legal side of things. But we're always come back to me to the basics of tax. And so that's my advice when people are like, I'd really like to do cross, I want to do what you do. Cool. Go start with taxes. Get
Mhm.
into taxes really deeply and you don't have to prepare taxes. Our firm doesn't prepare taxes, but we understand and we can speak tax. We can have
Mhm.
really intelligent conversations with their foreign and their US tax
Mhm.
advisors. So we
Mhm.
make sure that we're truly advocating for them. And I think even if that's not you, it should still be someone on your team. There
Mhm.
needs to be someone who really understands it deeply. And I have seen other advisors, cross-border advisors, link up very closely with an accountant and they are doing like all their cases together. And that's another great way to do it. Like I'm not saying my way is the right way. This is how we've done it and I feel like really at this point, like, really proud and, like, I think this is, like, working for us, and that's
Mhm,
what I look for when a
mhm,
resume is cross my desk. I'm looking
mhm,
like, "Okay, I can train you to become a CFP." It's
mhm.
much harder for me to train you to be a CPA or an EA with cross-border tax experience.
I agree. And even though I personally didn't come from a tax background, and I feel like that's in a sense, the weakest link, right? Like for if you know everything, but you don't know the tax part, then you really have to spend a lot of time, which is how I trained myself to becoming, more proficient in this field. And then the other side is the foreign tax part, like you said, in a higher tax jurisdictions. So how do you, I'm sure you also work with local tax people, but how do you get up to speed on, the foreign tax law, especially when some of them not in English? How did you originally get up to speed and how do you work with local tax professionals?
Yeah, so because I built my career in Germany and in Switzerland, I was just way more exposed to professionals in those countries than probably someone who's sitting in, New York and trying to like connect remotely with different time zones. So again, just being here in Europe, I have this huge advantage. And I think it's also important to note that good cross-border professionals are really busy. They have more than enough work than they can
Mhm,
ever take. Good tax professionals, either local who understand US expats or international experts who understand cross-border, also very, very busy. They don't need you at all. Like they have plenty of work. And so those relationships, taking the time to build those relationships is so important. Right. And so I've talked about this before. It's your job as a professional, especially one who isn't like you always have to be thinking, what am I adding to their life? Not how can they help you? They can help you. What am I adding to their life? Am I willing to pay them for their time? Like, am I sending them clients on a regular basis? Because when I get emails like, I just have a quick question. Honestly, my day, if you saw my calendar, it is like 15-minute blocks, like
mhm,
all
mhm,
day.
mhm,
I don't have time to
mhm.
answer your quick question. That's probably actually not a quick question because you don't even know the question to ask.
Otherwise, you would have asked the questions.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think it's so important if you're looking to enter this space that you do it humbly and just know like am I adding value and if not, how am I compensating that person for their time? And we no longer do free consults anymore. I used to like and we haven't done free consults now since January of this year. And that's been a really good decision for me because I was having like I just don't have enough time in my day. And if I take away my time, my family loses my time. And it's too valuable at this point. My family needs that time, and if you want to fit on my calendar, you're gonna have to pay for my time. Really sorry. And someone was like, "I can't believe you did that." I'm like, "That's I kinda had to." So, I think you just really have to understand what you can bring. One of the things that I did in my first year when I was trying to build relationships with some new advisors, I offered to prepare PowerPoint presentations for them. And all he had to do was show up. I had already booked the presentation. I already had a network of, a couple hundred people who wanted to come to that presentation. All they had to do was show up. Make it super, super easy for them, right? That's how you build relationships with really true experts. You have to add something to their life, not just say, "Can I pick your brain?"
So it's a really good point. Going back to, your basically your comfort zone, the type of clients you're working with. So you're based in Europe, and tell us a little bit more about the type of clients you're currently working for, who are your ideal clients in terms of where they are, what kind of life experiences, all of that.
Yeah, great question. And I think that kind of ties back to the other point that you were trying to lead me to, which was how did you get up to speed with your expertise? So
Mm-hmm,
it also ties into the power of having a niche, right? And so when I refer out other advisors, I am always looking for experts in regions or specific countries. I'm not looking for someone who's like, I do cross-border planning, whether you're in
mm-hmm,
Singapore or Argentina, I do it all. Because I am like, how? How can you do it all? Like, how do you know all this stuff? I don't think you can, and at least to me, the really good people don't. And so I would say, I live in Switzerland right now. I used to live in Germany. Our core clients are Switzerland and German based. And I would say there's a couple little countries that we do that I don't know any specialists for. And when we have the right case and opportunity that comes along and it makes sense for us to do that case, we will. So like we have a couple in Portugal, which I found really interesting when we had NHR, the non-habitual residents. I find it less interesting now. I don't yeah, new because I'm just like the planning opportunities for me, they're just not
Yeah.
exciting, it's not as interesting, and there are some experts who just do Portugal, and I'm like, take take these
Mhm.
clients. I don't do the UK, I don't do France, I don't do Italy, I don't do Spain. We have, a couple of clients in Belgium, we have a couple of clients in the Czech Republic, a couple of clients in the Netherlands. Really, where it makes sense, where when we have a strong network in that country.
Mhm.
I know a lot of
Mhm.
people in those countries, and again, like my spent a lot of time building networks.
Mhm.
Um, then I'm willing to take on a client, and they also have to have the right level of assets. So one of the things that I was super passionate about when I was starting my own firm and hanging my shingle was like, I really want to do one-time financial plans for, the emerging wealth, and like I'm super passionate about this. And so my first few plans, I charged $2,500 for cross-border financial planning.
Mhm.
And so, spoiler alert, that was not enough. That was not enough. And I realized I was getting so burnt out because people would be coming to me. They'd want my $2,500 plan.
Mhm.
They have
Mhm.
never done, financial planning work ever. Oftentimes they're going through some types of transition, job change, divorce, move,
Mhm.
kids moving. Like they're already coming to me with a reason. And just because it's cross border, that's already more complex.
Mhm.
And I was spending so much time on these plans, I was getting so burnt out. I was, like,
Mhm.
so miserable. I was working all the time and
Mhm.
not making a lot of money, and I was like, "This cannot." So I started to slowly make this transition, realizing
Mhm.
that people who I can really serve, and especially when we think about things that, like, are not fun to do in cross-border compliance, right? I
Mhm.
have a compliance team in the US and I have a compliance team in Switzerland. It is not cheap, it is not fun, and if I could get rid of compliance tomorrow, that would probably be amazing, but as of today, I have a lot of lawyers that I have to pay a lot of money
Mhm.
to make
Mhm.
sure that I am doing everything compliant, and it made me realize, like, no, I really have to support the clients, or have the 90% of my focus be on clients who can actually afford us, and we can
Mhm.
actually add enough value to their situation. And so for me, that kind of falls into almost like 2 client, groups. One, emerging wealth. So for this to me is those tech workers, those pharma, executives, people who are earning several hundred thousand a year minimum, and maybe they're working on their first 500,000 or million, but we're gonna get them there within the next 3 to
Mhm.
5 years. They're gonna hit a million,
Mhm.
right? And so
Mhm.
we're happy to kind of work with that kind of emerging wealth client who we're saying, "Okay, within 3 to 5 years of working us, we see that clear pathway to you to hit a million, even if you're only 30," right? That's that's like one thing. And so we're not looking for the people who earn 100,000 and they have 350 and they'll get
Mhm.
there in, 15 years. It's a very specific kind of emerging wealth client that we're
Mhm.
working with.
Mhm.
And then the other one, just I would say, is more like we have already kind of established we have our first million. We're working
Mhm.
more on, several million. And so for there, we're looking at clients in like that $2 to $10 million range. They're more
Mhm.
established.
Mhm.
We can add a lot of value to their situation
Mhm.
as well. What we
Mhm.
don't do is, someone who comes to us at 65 and they're retired and they've never done any financial planning and they have $750,000, we can't add value to their
Mhm.
situation. Our fees are too
Mhm.
high. They haven't done the planning,
Mhm.
the assets, and we really can't add value to their
Mhm.
situation. And so I'm looking to refer them out who can help them either as a one-time financial planner or just investment management. Like, what are they looking
Mhm.
for? I've gotten
Mhm.
really, really intentional about who we can support, and then everyone else, we've got great referral networks for them.
That's awesome. And I would love you to further make the case. You already made the case of like why it is very important to have a niche even within a cross-border planning space to have the right knowledge and network to help people. But it would be great to if you further make the case of how special it is perhaps in Switzerland and Germany and like those two particular countries, like why if you already know Spain or Portugal, you shouldn't just, like get into doing it without knowing too much. Yeah, tell us how even though it's all Eurozone, all in Europe, how they're specifically different from other places.
Yeah, great question. And even Switzerland and Germany, they are like not
Not
natural
so yeah.
complementary countries at all. And this just goes back to highlighting like my unique expertise, my unique professional experience that has led me to these two countries. Because I would say like France and Germany are more aligned than like Germany and Switzerland. Like, I don't yeah, it's kind of it's a unique pairing, again, just
Mhm.
based on my
Mhm.
my expertise, because the planning opportunities for the countries are actually completely, like, opposite. Totally
Mhm.
completely opposite. And,
Mm,
there's a number of reasons why you should really just kind of focus on a couple of countries. And I would honestly say the biggest thing there is going back to the networks, right?
mhm,
I get emails all the time from people. Can I just have an estate attorney in that country or can I have this or whatever? And it's like I have literally spent years building my professional networks and these people are really busy. Really, really busy. And they don't really need more work, but they will take work from the right referral partners. If I send a client, they're going to work with that client because they know me. I don't know your client. I don't know what they need. I don't know how you are going to treat that referral partner. I don't know anything about your case. And so I can't really just give you a name because I have no information. It's like going into a phone book and being like, okay, here's this person's, it doesn't
mhm,
translate. So I think you really have to focus on building those relationships, and that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. And then I think also, just like we have US tax law and legal changes all the time happening on the US side, you just doubled that or tripled that
mhm,
depending on the number of countries that you're trying to support. Trying to stay on top of all of those things, right? What are the visas that are now available for your clients? What are the pathways to citizenship? What are the different, opportunities or pitfalls that are going to be kind of coming up the pipeline? To try to do that and just say I do all countries, I would call that malpractice. Like honestly, that's like going to a doctor and be like, "Oh, yeah, we'll operate on your heart and then we'll do a brain surgery." I mean, it's really like to me, again, maybe I'm just not that smart, but I know that I can't do it. And one of the things that I found when I worked for another firm, it was just kind of like I would get a call and I would just be expected to take that client if they said yes, regardless of who they
mhm,
were, where they lived, how much money they have. If they wanted to work with
mhm,
us, we could work with them. And,
mhm,
you know, I guess in some ways it was like it gave me a really good, broad kind of education, but it was kind of like, you don't really know much of anything
mhm.
until you really start to specialize.
Yeah.
And also, when people know you for countries, your business is going to grow and your efforts are going to compound and you are going to meet key players and it's just going to kind of set you up to scale faster versus
Mhm,
okay, I know a couple things here, I know a couple things there and I can kind of hobble together and I have my practice. I think you just have to be like and I know this from starting out, less than 3 years ago, you have to be brave and you have to say no
mhm.
all the time, and I
Yeah.
say no way more than I say yes at this point, and that is my superpower.
It's great that you say yes to this podcast. And I'm going to also talk about,
Of course. No, I mean, I think the work finding these communities, finding the other cross-border people, it's so important. It's so, so important.
yeah, and one thing we haven't even touched on that's unique about your, I guess your, I shouldn't just call it a practice, but your business is that you are locally registered and also registered in the US. So tell us a little bit more about how that, I guess, opened door for you, or like the things you can do for clients that you maybe some other advisors cannot do when they don't
You
have
know
the dual register
Yeah, and
set
I
up.
get this question all the time about compliance. And it's like, for me, it's something I have spent the last 3 years, probably got close to $100,000 on navigating a lot of time, some tears, I would say. Like, it hasn't been a super easy process because I'm not coming from this, like, well, I guess I come from a compliance background, but completely different, like, compliance background, right? So for me, it's been this huge learning curve of figuring out what am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? Who should I work with? How do I work with them? And I get this, again, this is another question. I want to go and start working in Costa Rica and work remotely between my state and what should I do? I don't know. I don't know anything about Costa Rica. You have to like, right, there's some regions in the world that are high compliance regions.
Hmm.
Europe is a high compliance region. So just know if you're thinking about going to Europe, that's a high compliance region. And there's certain things there that are also high compliance, considerations. If you're trading in a country, that's a highly regulated consideration. And you need to ask for local, support. I don't know
Hmm.
whether you can do it or not. I just know what I'm
Hmm.
allowed to do being
Hmm.
registered here.
Hmm.
You have to go and you need to find your own lawyer and you need to take the time to actually do it and not just like hope and pray it's okay,
Hmm.
right? I think
Yeah.
it's really important as professionals, as fiduciary professionals who are saying we hold ourselves to this level and we guide our
Hmm.
clients through these things. Okay, well,
Hmm.
you have to do the same thing. right? You have to take it's on you to figure it out. There are other regions that I don't even know if the compliance exists. Like if you just show up in, I don't know, Peru, are you allowed to trade? Maybe. I have no idea. Like you really have to, because I've talked to other advisors and like, yeah, I've looked into it. There's literally like no regulatory authority. It hasn't been developed. And so it maybe is much easier, but then you also need to be thinking, okay, what's the security of the data, right? I show up in this country, I have a computer with all of my clients' personal information on it. Is that safe if they have no regulatory framework for me to operate under? I don't know. You have to think about that on your own terms.
Yeah, so in addition, I understand you do asset management, correct? You do investment
Yes, so
management.
we partner with external asset managers. So I'm registered in Switzerland and I'm registered in the US.
Mhm,
But I don't trade in Switzerland.
mhm,
I'm not allowed to trade in Switzerland. I do not ever
mm,
push buttons on my trades. I have a trader in the
mhm,
US who does all my trades
mhm,
and that we build
mhm,
our portfolios with, but I do not hit trade in Switzerland. And I think that's, you also have to understand there's different, every country
mhm,
has different levels of
mhm,
um, compliance
mm, mhm,
considerations. And so you
mhm.
have to understand what are you allowed to do under each framework.
Related to that, do you have a solution for people who are not US tax residents, maybe spouse of your clients you're planning together, but are, they're not bound by the US investment regulations. So do you
Yeah,
then
and
have
I
asset
think
managers locally that
yeah.
you work
So
with?
we also have an external local asset
Mhm,
manager.
mhm,
And so we just kind of weigh cost there. So some clients are very comfortable and basically they can go and they can create their own account and we can basically just advise them on their account. Hey, our recommendation would be to make these trades, blah, blah, blah. It's like relatively simple. Other clients are like, no, no, I want someone actually doing it for me. And then we have like local Swiss, but one of the things that I think surprises a lot of people is the price difference. The cost of investment management in Europe is much higher than it is on the US. In the US, where you can buy, a Vanguard ETF 0.03%, like 3 bips, that does not exist here. And so you
mhm.
really have to kind of weigh what works, what is the client comfortable with, what is the value of their portfolio? What can I do to kind of advocate for them? And does it make sense for them to pay potentially like 1.5%? um, in fees. So these are conversations that we have. Some clients, we still have them on. They may be on like a US um, custodian if they maybe worked in the US for a few years, they have their retirement account, they haven't been able to take a distribution out, they can't claim the treaty until, they hit a certain age. It might make sense for them to kind of keep on just for the low cost. But, as we know, under all of our America First policies, we have some major changes coming in. And like, how can a non US person remove US assets from the US? And that's a whole other consideration that non Americans and Americans are all very nervous about right now.
You really made a good point. We went from, talking about tax to investment to perhaps like something like immigration status or,
Oh, yeah.
visa. Yeah, some of the things that, like they're actually our clients' pain points but if you don't work primarily clients who live this kind of lifestyle, like you wouldn't necessarily know. So tell us a little bit more about what are some of the other pain points that like your clients just have to deal with constantly and you're uniquely helping them in this case.
Yeah, I mean, here's a good example, like relocation or like finding the right housing team. There's a global housing shortage right now, right? Everyone is talking about the cost of housing, and to me, expats, right, pay a premium, right?
Mm,
You are not local, you have a different visa type. I know you can get it if you pay a premium because
mm,
there otherwise there's like locals out the door looking for apartments as well or houses as well. And so I think one of the things that I know I've experienced in my own life and I talk about with our clients is if you can control your housing costs, right? Because they might eat up anywhere between 30 to 60% of your budget. You have unique ability to potentially have either higher costs or build wealth faster, right? Those are the levers that we can pull. And so one of the things I always recommend to people is finding like local housing support, right? And we have a Rolodex of names of people that we will say, hey, the other clients have used this. Maybe I've used these people, right? To get in to find apartments that are not even listed. They're not even public, they'll never be public. Um, so those are relationships that I don't think like if maybe some planner in Tennessee is thinking about for their clients, but these are the conversations we're having with our clients is like housing, immigration.
Yeah.
Here's an immigration lawyer. You're leaving your job and you want to go on a local contract. Okay, well, let's get you with the right immigration team to make sure that you can actually stay if you want to stay. School support, that's probably one that doesn't come up a lot if you're a US only, right? Do our kids go local? Do we go international? Do they do IB? Are we planning for US universities? Are we planning for international universities? Who's going to take these 529 plans that the grandparents
Mhm.
started? I mean, these are like the
Mm,
conversations we're having every day. And as you can tell, I just like love it. But it is. And I think I love it because it's like everything.
mm,
It's their entire lives. And I just
mhm.
love people and their lives and the
Yeah.
stories that they have to tell.
Tell us a little bit more about, as cross-border planners, obviously, we're always trying to get better to serve clients better. What are some of the things that, through these 3 years, working your own firm that you wish that you are doing, you wish that you have resources to do better for your cross-border clients? What are some of the things the industry can do better? What are some of the resources that's just not there and needs to be built out?
Yeah. I mean, I think education is still so key and it's still a pain point because there's just I mean, and we've talked about this like with the Sika network. If it's professional to professional giving training, that's great, but again, we're all doing our own countries, and so if I start talking about the Swiss pension system, well, that's great for anyone who wants to focus on Switzerland. It's not great for the person who's, like, doing the Argentina pension system or whatever, like, so figuring out and so one of the things that I've figured out is I need to get connected locally and need to educate myself locally. And same with the tax side, right? I am an EA, so that means I also have to do on top of my CFP ongoing education requirements, I also have to do ongoing tax education requirements. So for me, a lot of that has been focused on the cross-border aspects of international tax and how do I stay on top of that? And so just between those two things, that's what, 52 hours a year of ongoing professional education and then finding like the local things and sometimes that's going to like legal conferences or immigration conferences, things that maybe I'm not even getting CFE credit for, but knowing that these are interesting topics that I'm seeing for my clients and it's my responsibility, right? This all becomes your responsibility as the owner, as the planner, to just explore and take the initiative. But I still think like when I built my firm, I didn't come from a planning first firm. I mean, they did planning. I had never gone through a software to do that. And there is no software for cross-border planning. It's like kind of software and then an Excel spreadsheet. And I don't think I fully appreciated that. Now I have my own firm and I'm like, oh yeah, I can, this is a pain point. So
Mhm.
any, tech developers out there, call me. We need a better software, multi-currency planning software. And um,
Mhm.
that remains a huge planning point. But I think with AI, I think we will be able to I think every firm will have the opportunity to kind of self-create their own software. The other thing is that I think is needed is getting good pipelines for good advisors. There's a lot of people who want to come into the cross border, but they're maybe getting connected with the wrong clients. So how do we get them better matched up with the clients that they want to serve and the clients that are coming to them that maybe aren't in their niche, but they're saying yes to because they don't know what else to do with their time or their efforts? Getting them over it served, right? Because I see this all the time, and I had a call with a UK advisor today, and she was like, "I would like to hire you to, basically tell me what to do with my US client." And I was like, "I don't do that. I'm really sorry. Like, I work with clients directly, or like that's all." And she was, I think, really put off by that. And I wasn't trying to be rude, but I just know what I'm really good at, and I'm gonna do that all the time every day, and I'm not gonna take on extra things because I don't need more work. And so you have to get really, really comfortable in knowing what you're really good at, saying yes to those things and saying no to everything else. And I think those first 3 years when you're building your confidence, if we could help people short circuit that and just find the right people right away, like that would be excellent. Yeah.
And when you look towards the future, what are some of the pieces that you're just starting to build out that you'd like to see in the next 3 to 5 years for your
Yeah,
cross-border planning
I'm
firm?
really excited about how our firm is gonna be able to leverage AI, and we already have, and I think if I think about it, we probably and this isn't great, but I'll admit it, like, we probably won't need to hire a junior person, like, ever, quite honestly, and there's a lot of risk for a small firm to hire junior people because it's like, "Okay, I'm gonna spend a lot of time training you, and then hope that you stay and don't just like go leave and start your own firm." And like for us, we can basically leverage and train our models to do a lot of the grunt work. And so that now I can have a administrative assistant and I can have our next level planner. And we used to probably would have two people, one or two people in the middle, and we really don't need them anymore.
Mm,
And the only reason would be for career development. And so I have to decide at some point, do we really want to grow? Because I don't know if we need to grow, right? Do we really
mhm.
wanna grow that it's worth the time, effort, and risk of bringing someone in to hope that they stay long
Yeah,
term? I don't know. I
yeah.
think, well, that's gonna be a huge pain point in the coming years.
And since you mentioned AI, I'm going to ask you what is the one thing in your current firm you would not give AI to do? And give me an example that, that beyond just the AI note taker, I know that's not what you're thinking about. The one thing that you're going to be able to really utilize AI in the financial planning process, especially on the cross-border side.
Wait, that I would utilize or I wouldn't
Yeah, you
utilize?
would. You would.
Oh,
So one thing that
yeah,
you wouldn't give AI to do, and one thing you will have
okay.
already given AI to do.
I think in the age of AI, it's all about the people,
Mm,
right? And I think that your people skills, the soft skills, the need to have really good level of communication with your clients, to show up virtually or in person for your clients, those are never going to be, I mean, I'm saying never, who knows, but at least in for a while, I don't see those being replaced. And so if you are someone who is like, a very typical engineer and you are a little cold and you have a hard time communicating, I would be throwing all my time, money, and effort into figuring out how do I become a warm person? Because people will hire people who can communicate. And if you can't communicate, but you can give them really good data, that might work right now. It probably doesn't work in 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. I don't know. But, like, we have more than enough data for everything. We have so much information. Everyone is information overload. You need the skills to actually have conversations with clients to help them muddle through what they're actually trying to get at. What are they actually trying to solve? Because so many of us in the cross-border financial planning space, our clients have enough money. They're not gonna run out of money. That's, like, not what we're planning for, right? We're not like, "Okay, and you will die with $1 and you'll be fine." Like, we are not that's not what our Monte Carlo scenarios are looking like, right? So, we need to be the guide with them. So, like, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I'm planning on doing next year is I'm planning on doing the Kinder Planning Institute, right? Because I'm realizing my clients are not coming to me really for planning. They're coming to me for being a guide to go through life with, to be a thought partner with, thinking through hard decisions.
mhm,
Those are not numbers on a spreadsheet for most of the
mhm,
conversations.
mm,
So I think that's really important. And then the things that I think that AI can replace is like a lot of the number stuff, right? Running the scenarios, even if it's not AI. I mean, we're talking about like, okay, if we're using right capital, I mean, it's still a tool that we're
mhm,
all comfortable
mhm,
using. So I think we have to just learn to like leverage those tools. We can't hide behind them anymore and be like, okay, the information is here. Look at it. There it is. You're fine. Now we need to get in front of it and be leading them and having the conversation and being engaged in their life. That's
mhm.
very important.
And I think that's a really good, kind of like bring us back to, what makes a good financial planner in general, not just cross-border, but, in our profession, what the clients need. So to kind of close our conversation, I normally ask our guests one of these few questions, but I think I'm going to ask you. So, for a person that's in your target audience, let's say a US expat in Europe and maybe even happen to be in Switzerland and Germany and those countries. And they're looking for a financial planner, and you may or may not have the capacity, or they may be better served by somebody else. But, if they were looking for a cross-border financial planner, like in the current environment, how are they going to find one? And what are some of the things they need to not even just ask, but pay attention to of what, because not all cross-border financial planners are the same.
Yeah,
So
I think
what,
that's a great point. And so I was a little shocked when I had someone reach out to me because they found me on ChatGPT. And I'm not entirely even sure how they found me on ChatGPT, but they said I was asking ChatGPT who is a cross-border financial planner in Switzerland. And then your name came up and that's why we're talking. And I was like, okay, cool. So like this is something I need to be paying attention to. And so I think if I think about how clients are finding me, it's generally through my referral network. Either other clients are referring me and our firm, other professionals that we work with are referring us and our firm. ChatGPT apparently is referring. And I also spend a lot of time writing, not only our blogs, writing for Bloomberg, doing interviews for other news networks. And I think that all helps feed the algorithm so that even though our firm is relatively small, we have a huge impact on an SEO. And I think if I think back to where I was 3 years ago when I was taking the time and wow, 5 people came to my website. And I think like over the last year, we've had over like 3 million hits on the website, like absolutely insane. Like we're up there with like some of the really big firms. So I think you have to figure out, and that all goes down to the power of niching down, right? If you have a niche and you know what it is and you know what your clients' pain points are and you can talk about them every single day, when they Google that, your stuff is going to come up and ChatGPT is going to say, we found this person for you. That allows you to build a lot faster than if you just say, I do cross-border and I do every single country ever. And like, if you have a question, I also think it's on individuals to ask, who do you serve? How do you serve them? Right? Some clients only want investment management. Okay. Maybe we're the right firm. Maybe we're not, if that's the case, because we really are a planning first firm. Some clients want really deep relationships. Some clients just want a project. I just have this project and I don't want ongoing support. I just have this project. Will you do it? And I think it's also on the advisor to communicate what they offer and what they don't. And when possible, list their prices. So if you go on our website, connectedfinancialplanning.com, you will see our services are listed. Our prices is listed. And sometimes if we're on a really long wait list, I will even be like, and we don't even have capacity to help you for 6 months. So like, just so you know, we're all on the same page. Right. And when you look at our Calendly links, when you want to book a call with us, I'm asking you, tell me about your financial situation. And here's our prices. And here's who we typically serve. Does that sound good to you? Can you confirm that these prices seem like reasonable for you? And if you aren't looking for that, here's a paid consult so that if you just have that quick question, you can still talk to me, but you could pay, you're gonna have to pay for it. And if you don't want to pay anything, here's a blog, here's a podcast, here's my YouTube channel, all the ways that you can get to know me for free. So I think it's really like in our profession, I think the people who will become educators are going to be leaders. And so I think that's a huge thing. And don't you just want a more educated consumer? Someone who's coming to you and they already know, yeah, you serve the countries that I need. And I understand how you're going to be compensated and I'm comfortable with that. Like, I think even if it's not writing technical blog posts, you can still educate your client about what you do and how you do it and how you're compensated for it.
And I think this is a perfect, summary of, what we talked about today. And Arielle is a great educator, both to the U.S. expats community through her podcast, Passport to Wealth. And also she spends a lot of times, even though she no longer do it for free, talking to, clients and advisors. And we've all learned a lot from her, even though her firm is only 3 years old and she's going to have a great impact, I'm sure. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. And we hope to have you on maybe in the future, in the 3 to 5 years, to see which part of financial planning process AI has taken over and you're only doing the face-to-face work with clients.
Hui-chin, thank you so much for being a leader in this space. Thank you so much for the invitation to join you today. And I'm looking forward to listening into all the other interviews and seeing how everyone else is building their firm because there's really no one right way. What works for me might not work for you, and that's okay. Like, I'm here for it.
All right. Thank you so much, Arielle.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the SIGA Network podcast. This show is produced by Jeffrey Benalisha. You can find more episodes on thesiganetwork.com/podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Until next time.